This is a Dubai Eye 103.8 podcast. Family Matters.
On Afternoons with Helen Farmer.
On Sundays, we talk family, we talk children's health, we talk education, and we talk parenting too. And great to be joined on the line now by the head of secondary and vice principal at Heartland International School, Yasmin Nawi. Yasmin, thank you so much for joining us. We're going to be talking about the psychology of staying at home, something you have had experience of in the past and have written an article that is particularly pertinent right now. But we do like to have a bit of a mental health check-in with all of our guests. And I just wondered, how are you today and how have the last few weeks been?
Well, I was very surprised to hear, Helen, that it's actually World Laughter Day, so I'll have to practice that. And then I was listening to you with your your 3-year-old, and I was relaying the fact that my 3-year-old decided to cover himself in shaving foam instead of doing messy play outside. So thank you for sharing that.
Well, I find if you don't laugh, you cry when many aspects of parenting.
I try not to do that quite often, but no, thank you very much. Yeah, how have I been? It's a very interesting experience. To be living through this, and every day is a little bit different, and I have to use my mantra sometimes a little bit more often on some days than others.
What's your mantra, Yasmin?
It's be hopeful, be grateful, and be thankful. So
I love that.
I try and really share that with my students. I sometimes have to repeat that a few more times in the day if I hit a frustrating point.
Saying
I'm not made to be behind a computer.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you. You know, it's been a huge adjustment for pupils, but also for educators and, school facilitators. A huge adjustment that happened very, very quickly. And, as parents, it's more natural for us to think about, what impact is that having in our children. We're certainly going to be talking about that today, especially when it comes to the exercise side. But just curious about what impact you're seeing on your staff. What kind of support are they getting and needing?
Well, it's very interesting that we set up lots of different things in our school. So we have a well-being committee in our school that actually operates throughout the year, and it's everything from having done, we have a well-being regular quiz, and now we've continued that in our lockdown. So one of our fantastic teachers is actually doing the well-being quiz on a Friday evening. We've shared well-being iftar, but we also have a fantastic counsellor who actually sends us a silver lining message every single morning. We've got a great boss, and she's actually written to us individually to actually give us some shout outs and, just moments of pick-me-ups and feel good. We spread it round. So we're conscious that we're all in this very strange environment because we're used to being together for 8-9 hours a day in school.
Often more than we are with our partners.
And it's, that's what I wrote in my article. My husband actually manages a conversation without me falling asleep now, which is a rarity. But we're used to being in this environment of 600 plus students and 150 colleagues, and so now we to connect with someone we have to dial into Teams, and I'm preferring to actually see their faces than pick up the telephone and just hear their voices. So we look out for each other, and we've each of us on a senior leadership, we've actually got a staff attendance group, and for me it's my way of saying good morning to my 10 colleagues that sign in with me every morning and have a quote of the day, and we give each other virtual thumbs up, but we try and do as many Zoom meetings as possible so we actually physically see each other, and we do that once a week as a staff meeting, but many more times in the week on an individual basis. So yes, it's new and different.
Yeah, it's completely different, but as you've kind of picked up on there are so many things that are actually really beneficial to us right now, and a lot of that is technology based. And as I alluded to, you have actually been through this before. You have lived through a full lockdown before when you were a child, when things were obviously very, very different. Can you tell us a little bit about that experience, Yasmin?
Well, I wanted to write the article because actually 37 years ago, growing up in Tripoli, Lebanon, my father was a doctor on the front lines there during the Civil War. There was no such thing as a telephone line that actually picked up, so let alone we didn't have mobile phones. And when I spoke to my students about this experience, I had to go back and say to them, the internet was not invented. There was no such thing as WhatsApp or Facebook, which is where I get, and Twitter, where I get most of my information. Food was not readily available. If I don't feel like cooking, I can call any delivery service in Dubai and it's here within 45 minutes. There was no such thing. We didn't even have fresh food back then. And then the other basic needs that were denied to us, which is, we had no water for days. We had no light. We had, that fear of actually, gunfire. So very different experience, the feeling of being trapped. Sometimes it ebbs and flows with me personally when I have an anxiety of, why can't I go and meet my friend at Lime Tree and have a carrot cake, it comes and goes. But, 37 years ago, we didn't have so many different things that our students are still able to be connected with each other nowadays.
Well, and I think, as you say, completely different circumstances, but there's still common themes of uncertainty and powerlessness in some ways and decisions being taken away from you in other aspects. But there are some definite kind of uniting aspects of those two experiences. And in the blog post, you mentioned the word rapport a lot. What does that word mean to you, and why do you feel like it's so important right now?
Well, I am an English teacher by trade, but I've taught psychology as well to many students. And, when I referenced Daniel Goleman's social intelligence, it was this whole aspect of actually being able to see somebody and pick up on their visual, their verbal cues, their body language, connecting with them, eye to eye, and being able to be in that moment and having that rapport with that person or many students, as we often have in our classrooms. And unfortunately, through a computer screen, it's not quite the same. And I feel myself kind of edging closer and closer to my camera, thinking that I am going to go through that camera and then be in front of my students. And, literally 10 minutes ago, I was just in assembly with them. And I always still start with, it's lovely to see you here. And I say to them, I do see you in my mind, because I can picture where we all sat and how we were. Rapport is just such an important aspect of just connecting. And for me, I thrive on social interaction. So sitting in front of a screen, I understand I try and speak to maybe upwards of 15 to 20 colleagues per day in different, meetings and venues, but it's not the same as standing in front of them in a staff room to go, oh, well, that's so lovely. I can't believe that piece of information's come out on the news, or why have you broken your arm, or how was that game yesterday? And that kind of small chit-chat that we would say is a part of you having a rapport with people and reading their body language. You would immediately know, oh, someone's not having such a great day. And you could reach out, touch them on the elbow and say, it's all right, come on, tell me, let's have a cup of coffee
send them a little
together,
message and say, oh, you seem quiet earlier. And I know exactly what you mean, because you imagine my kind of job. We have people in the studio in normal circumstances for sometimes an hour, and getting into really often in-depth discussions where I need to read people and say, am I going somewhere that they're not comfortable with? Whereas over the phone, it's so much more difficult. And you feel like you can have a much more pure connection in person.
And that's the same with children, as most importantly with children. I mean, I teach in a secondary school, and I have done so for over 20 years. And the rapport with secondary students is slightly different from the, a 3 or a 4-year-old that you can just go up and hug. The secondary students, they are in that socially awkward stage. But, one of my students actually said the other day, do you know what, miss, I actually miss our hallways, just walking from lesson to lesson. And it's just that whole camaraderie, that whole aspect of feeling that you're part of a team and you're going from one lesson to the next, and you're having that mindless chatter, on the way to PE or drama or music.
But
it
is these kind of seeming, as you said, small talk or mindless chatter that adds up to an atmosphere of a place. I just wondered, we talked earlier about rapport and how those little snippets of conversation, that eye contact, that elbow squeeze, can add up to relationships and make everything seem much more real and meaningful, Yasmin. And I just wondered, how do you think teachers and students and parents can make up for that lack of real life rapport during these times?
Well, from our perspective, in our school, we're doing live lessons, so we're actually seeing our students all the time. For us in secondary, we're online with our students now. We're in Ramadan timing, so we're in slightly reduced timings. But my tutors still meet with their tutees every single morning for 10, 15 minutes. Everyone is registering. I'm going to say normal in inverted commas, but they're seeing their tutors. Hello, good morning, how are you? And then they go off into their lessons. But our students from FS in Heartland are actually doing that as well with their teachers. So they log in for live sessions in the morning, and the rapport is there because they're able to look at the face of their teacher. And as the older they get, their teacher is guiding them through the learning that is occurring. And yes, it's not ideal rapport, but it is happening. So there is that connectivity between that 4-year-old child, the 9-year-old child, our 15-year-old children, and that they are getting to communicate with their teachers. We are using Microsoft Teams, so, students are able to see when they are handing in their work that we're grading it and sending it back to them, and giving them feedback. We're able to encourage them to be as creative as possible in the environment of their homes. And we're doing that by actually being really thinkers outside the box a lot more than perhaps we would have been with them in front of us. Because we know that they have the whole canvas of their homes now, to do science experiments. And I think they were burning food the other day to have a look at energy.
I didn't realise I was a scientist.
So they're doing lots of very interesting and creative things. And that's our students, from age 3 all the way up to, we have up to 15, 16-year-olds in our school. So even though rapport is not happening physically surrounding each other, our students are still able to have some kind of a connection with their teachers on a daily basis. And interestingly, for us in our secondary school, we're hitting near to 100% attendance every single day. So the students are getting up and they are getting ready and they're putting those cameras on, and it's fantastic. And I've visited some of the younger lessons. And it's fantastic, to see the young students actually see their teachers and start waving frantically. And they do, they're going a little bit crazy in their own living rooms, but they're following along with, the exercises that are being done on the screen or the tasks that have been set to go away and do with Lego. So rapport is there. It's just packaged in a different form for the last 7 weeks.
Yasmin, I'd love to ask you to reflect back on your time then as a child. And can I ask you, how do you think that lockdown you spoke of earlier affected your learning and education? Do you think it put you back? Because I know that's a concern that lots of parents have right now.
My experience in Tripoli, Lebanon was very, very different because there was no such thing as being online learning. So I was very lucky in that my mother was actually, quite keen that we kept up with all our languages at home. So we spoke English, French and Arabic at home, and she's a very big reader, my mum. So actually learning was very much about reading. Mm-hmm. Of course, we weren't held back. I mean, as soon as we got to safety to England and then on to Canada, we're very resilient as children and we bounced back. And it was just about honing the talents and skills. So we had a piano at home. So it was just about going back to those piano teachers. But really, at age 8, and I was 9 at the time, my brother was 5, he remembers very little of it. For me, I don't think there was a time where I thought, I'm behind in the class or anything, because I think my reading just stayed so far in advance, because I had a huge library at home, and now children are so lucky they have virtual libraries at their fingertips.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you, and I'm asking this, from your point of view as both a parent and a teacher. Lots of us are understandably worried that, children won't be reaching the levels that they might have done had the situation not occurred. What would your message to them be, Yasmin?
Absolutely not to worry. Children are having the best time of their lives. If I look at my 18-month-old and my 3-year-old, they've never had so much mummy and daddy time. Mm-hmm. If I look at some of my colleagues who have 2-3 children at home, they've never had so much dedicated time at home where they're let loose into the kitchen, they're let loose in the garden for so many hours to explore and do science experiments. All these, the children nowadays, I think, are going to be far more advanced when they get back to us, when we're all allowed back into our school buildings, that we actually have to rethink our curriculum, because I think they would have been so innovative and so far in advance of the things that we've been putting forward to them that we're going to need more challenging curriculum for them. We won't want to hold them back to what curriculum that we perhaps have at the moment. So I think actually the students of today are incredibly lucky because they have these huge virtual places for them to be, not just in these libraries. I did a virtual tour of the Etihad Museum the other day with my Year 10 students. That's amazing, and with another class, we were in Brazil touring Rio de Janeiro virtually. So, 37 years ago, I was virtually doing whatever I could through the pages of a book and through the pictures that I had. Today, we have everything at our fingertips.
I love that perspective, Yasmin. Thank you so much. And where can people read the article in full if they want to hear more about your experiences and your learnings from it?
Well, we welcome you to our website and on our Twitter and all of our social media pages, heartlandinternational.com.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. Wishing you a happy and safe Ramadan, and stay home, stay safe, keep learning, keep teaching, and really appreciate your time and insights, Yasmin. Thank you.
You've been listening to a Dubai Eye 103.8 podcast. To enjoy lots more from Dubai Eye in the United Arab Emirates, just go to DubaiEye1038.com or find them wherever you normally get your podcasts.